For the first scenario on whether or not to pull the lever, my initial reaction would be to follow the virtue ethics school. In this case, I would have the virtue of nonviolence so that I may not be directly responsible for someone else's death. Additionally, I would feel a sense of responsibility for killing the one man, even if I were to not choose to allow the trolley to move forward and kill the five, which would also impede on the liberty principle that's associated with the veil of ignorance approach. I'll go into that a little bit deeper in the second scenario. I apply to that one as well. On the contrary to the first two, in looking at a utilitarian perspective, in the case of the example in the TV show The Good Place, I would probably uphold a more utilitarian approach, only because in that scenario, you're behind the wheel, so to speak, of the trolley, and have to make that quick knee-jerk reaction whether or not to allow the trolley to move forward or to go ahead and take control of that lever inside the driver's cabin, I suppose you could call it, to move the tracks or move the trolley onto the tracks where the one man is standing. So I really covered all three there, but primarily to answer that first scenario that was presented in the first video, I would follow the virtue ethics school. Now, for the second scenario, with the fat man, I would hold the virtue of nonviolence once again in the virtue school of ethics. Much like the majority of people, I believe is 90% still, I'd feel too directly responsible for the fat man's death for pushing him off the bridge and stopping the trolley. On top of that, the veil of ignorance played a role for me in this case as well. Again, the liberty principle, in that the principle demands that everyone enjoy the maximum liberty without intruding upon the freedom of others. And I felt that by pushing the fat man over onto the tracks and saving the five workers, that would be a direct violation of the liberty principle, as that would be a direct impediment of the freedom of life itself in that situation. Lastly, as it pertains to the surgeon scenario, there's a lot of aspects that could play a role in this case. However, eliminating everything else, such as one of the factors that came to mind for me was the age of the patients, eliminating all that and the randomness that could be associated with it, I adopted the idea, or the scenario rather, of taking the five individuals from the tracks example, as well as the one individual from that same example. So essentially just six men of the same age, same occupation, all things being the same, really, and trying to make that decision of whether or not to save just the one or to sacrifice the one for the five. In this case, I would take a utilitarian approach or have a utilitarian mindset. Reason being is because, or rather, if I could backtrack a little bit, to me, this case is not the same as the first two, as my responsibility in the third scenario as a surgeon is to save as many people as possible. And using the utilitarian approach would accomplish that to the highest degree.